This is a Balanced Brain podcast with your hosts, Melanie Nicholson and Sean Clift.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Balanced Brain podcast. My name's Sean Clift, and I'm joined with my good friend and co-host, Melanie Nicholson. Melanie, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks, Sean. And I'm really happy to be talking about meditation.
Yeah, so our episode today is about meditation. Let's get straight into it. Melanie, I know that you've been practicing meditation for about 15 years. So how did you get started? What got you into meditation?
Well, it was around my accident, so my traumatic brain injury. And after I'd come out of rehab, and I guess got my cognitive skills back, I've always been a full-on thinker, and it just became overwhelmed with thoughts. So I actually went and saw a psychologist who specialised in brain injury, and that she introduced me to a form of meditation. She used to show me videos of things like the waves crashing, and my favorite was a car going around a mountain non-stop, just a car going around a mountain.
Sure.
And at the time, I remember thinking, how I don't know if I can do this, but it actually really ended up slowing down my thoughts, and it was a really important part of my recovery.
Great. So that's how you got started. Then What did you do? Did you start exploring some other methods, or what happened?
Yeah. So then my next biggest step was guided meditation. And that got me up to like 10, 15 minutes. And I just found that really helpful to, again, focus my thoughts rather than, I found it very hard to relax, Sean. Like I always found it hard to relax. So focus for me was important. So just being able to focus on someone's instructions into relaxation, it was a really good gateway for me. Yeah.
And now what do you do for your practice now?
I've done absolutely everything that you can think of. I've got into walking meditation, singing meditation.
So walking meditation, what's that? Is it something you listen to on headphones? And
no, it's actually as you know, I'm lucky to live near the beach. So it's literally like just walking up and down a beach and just concentrating on one foot in front of the other. So you're really just focusing on your feet, and you're watching your feet just go from one step to the next, and then listening. I use the waves again to focus in. So the walking meditation is a really good starting point, I think, for a lot of people. I was just trying to mix it up, and that's what it happened with that.
Okay. So how often do you use meditation? Is it a daily practice, or for you, how often?
Yeah. So for a long time, until last year, I had a daily practice. Last year is probably the first year with COVID and everything where I lost that discipline. And I kind of paid the price for that, Sean, because I just had noticed that, certainly my mental well-being was quite affected by just not having that practice. And that was just because I got consumed like with what was going on and the fear kind of, So I really had to go back to having a practice this year. And I've tried for this is the first year I've tried mantra, which is like just a constant sound, like a particular sound like Om, or I have whole mantras where I Satta Nama, like just particular words which are Hindu in nature. And I found that to be good for these circumstances. Like I think you've got to mix it up, and what works best for you is by trial and error. And
sure.
And for different times, like even for a long-term meditator like me, I had to try a whole different tack this year. Yeah. What about you, Sean? I know I'd only really found out that you had been meditating not long ago. So how did it start for you?
Well, look, in a similar way, I battled with mental health for about 5 years, and I was really looking for ways that weren't medication, really, to help with the illness. And I was suggested meditation by a couple of doctors, and I sort of started to have a look into it and thought that I'd just try out a practice myself. So I remember the first time I really gave it a go, and I went to a nearby lake from where I live, and I just sort of sat down and just found a really nice, comfortable spot that was nice and quiet, and just tried to sort of clear my mind and close my eyes. And I found it really helpful almost straight away. after that, I started to do a little bit of reading and research. So that was probably about 18 months ago I started. Now for me, it's a daily practice. Like you, I tried a couple of different methods. So at first, I really didn't know what I was doing. And I think that can be a little bit daunting for people because you might think that you look stupid or it's silly or it's not really working or it's a waste of time. So, then I started to research, well, what sort of different methods are there? So like you, I did some guided meditations, which I found really helpful when I first started out. I've experimented with some mantra meditations as well. But for me now, I've almost gone back to what I originally did at the start, which is simply concentrating on my breath to start with, which I find is a really, really helpful way to get started. And the reason for that, Melanie, is that there's actually a little bit of science behind that. And that is that when you focus on your breath, it's the only sort of function in our body which is both conscious or subconscious. I mean, most of the time we just breathe without thinking about it. So we just sort of breathe and we're doing other things where it's at our work or looking after the kids or doing the dishes or whatever it is that you're doing. You don't even think about your breath. If you're doing exercise, then unconsciously you start breathing heavier. Whereas if you can actually focus on your breath, you can consciously control your breath as well. So you can slow your breath down, you can make it nice and steady, you can control the rate of inhaling and exhaling. So it's a really good way to start to have a look at how your body and how your mind works both consciously and subconsciously, because with meditation, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get to that subconscious level. So I find focusing 2 or 3 minutes at the start of a meditation just on breath kind of changes your body. It gets you into a state where you're starting to think about your subconscious, not just your conscious thoughts. And the breath really focuses that subconscious mind. Then all I do is let thoughts come and go. I don't try and clear my mind, because anyone who says that meditation is about clearing your mind, I don't think that's achievable. So what you want to do is just let things come in and go. And what I find is in a good meditation session, which for me is about 15 minutes, I might think about 15, 20 different subjects or topics. It just sort of comes in and out. It's quite random. And that's a really good way to get started. So a lot of people think, I don't know about meditation. But really, if anyone's ever been to a nice beach somewhere and just sat on their own for 10 minutes and watched the surfers or watched the waves come in, essentially that's meditation. If someone's gone on a nice long walk somewhere and is a bit puffed out at the end, but finds this really great hill and really great view and looks out over the view for 10 minutes and just sort of thinks about how wonderful it is, I mean, that's meditation. What you want to do is you want to try and recreate that situation wherever you want, whether it's at home or whether it's a nice quiet room somewhere in a workplace or whatever. That's the sort of thing that you're trying to recreate.
Well, I was just thinking about when you were saying, it's just bringing focus to, things like that. I think about when my niece and nephews were really young, and I know you remember when colouring books became all the rage. But I found colouring in with my nieces and nephews to be really meditative. Like, because I'm not their parents, I don't have the stresses of, making sure the kids are here and there. I could literally devote my time to colouring in with my niece and I would sometimes do it for a couple of hours. And kids are really present. Like, they're just,
Absolutely.
when they're focused on something, and I found that incredibly relaxing. So going back to, it doesn't need to be sit down and, have this structured time. It
Absolutely.
can be really about thinking of different ways that count as meditation.
And that, by colouring in, you're really starting to use your subconscious, because once you sort of start to say, okay, well, I'm going to do this colour in this particular area, and you really start colouring in with the kids, and I do it with my daughter all the time, it just becomes something that is automatic. It's a little bit like driving. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of the times when you're driving the car, you're not really thinking about changing gears and how fast or slow you're going. You're just sort of going along with the flow of the traffic. It's not until you sort of need to snap out and think, oh, where do I need to turn here to get off the freeway? Or somebody's pulled up in front of me, I need to slow down quickly. Your subconscious flicks back into consciousness. It's a little bit like a musician. I mean, I've played music all my life, and I find I get into a meditative state when I'm playing drums in a band, for example. I mean, when I'm drumming with other musicians, I'm so practiced at the art of drumming that I don't really think about
it.
what I'm doing with my hands or my legs. I'm really focusing on what the other musicians are doing and focusing on the music. Sure, there might be a little tricky part where there's a timing change, or I need to do a particular kind of drum fill, which becomes a little bit more complicated. And then you flick, you go from subconscious back into conscious to do that bit, and then you slot back into the groove. So musicians find themselves in a meditative state as well. So when you're practicing meditation, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get yourself to recreate when your subconscious mind starts taking over, rather than the conscious mind.
And going back to the breath, Sean, like where I've learnt mantra is I started Kundalini yoga this year, and Kundalini yoga is almost completely about the breath.
Yep.
And I found myself in parts at first quite resistant to it, because I've realized that I've spent a lot of years chest breathing, which we know through the science is related to anxiety, can be, like it's a stress response. So Kundalini is all about learning to breathe, of course, through the belly, and just really focusing on that, holding positions, like with the breath, and actually being so focused on the breath that, some of those difficult thoughts can come in, like, the frustration of actually being conscious of the breath. I know it sounds strange, but it's like, I should be able to just do this all the time. So that's been, I was quite resistant to doing any type of breath practice like that for a long time. And I wanted to know why that was. So,
right. And why was that? Why were you anxious about that?
I think because I just didn't want to overcomplicate something when I'd already had so much overcomplication in my life, not realizing that the breath is essential to bring consciousness to, because it actually, it just even being able to do 3 deep breaths through your nose, if that can be just the quickest way to calmness. And I don't know why I was resistant for that for so long, when it's really just, it's probably something I even did when I was younger. Like I used to go to the doctors, and you know how you used to have to get a needle, and I remember actually doing it when I was a kid. I'd be like, okay, I'm just going to calm my breath. So I guess I've been doing it unconsciously, and I was a blood donor for a long time, and I did it that way. But when it came to actual like a proper meditation yoga practice that was solely focused on it, so I guess that's part of Kundalini yoga, is learning about what that resistance is to breath, which is life, right? Like,
right, exactly.
We want to get deep in that. But so I mean, now with restrictions that have come through in Newcastle, we haven't been able to practice, but it's certainly something I'm really interested in, and I think it's just going to deepen my meditation practice even more, and make me more connected to the breath, which I think is going to become a really critical element, particularly over the last 18 months with COVID, like that stress response on the body and the nervous system. I think breath's going to become a really something that people may not have ever thought about, but now want to learn a bit more about.
Absolutely. Look, what I want to do is I've got some research here actually on the benefits of meditation. But before I go through it, what I want to do is, what's the benefits for you, just personally? What do you get out of it?
What do I get out of it? I do get an overwhelming sense of well-being, and for me, the fear goes. So any fear of the unknown or fear of the future, when I'm when I'm actually getting in that zone, that's what people talk about, I realize that all is okay. Like it's that nothingness that, when you're really, I've had some incredible moments of just being able to see the bigger picture of life and sort of almost step out of my body to understand that, that things work out and
Yeah.
that there
So
is a much bigger picture here. And I've always had that kind of spiritual belief, but I can't tell you how overwhelming it is when you get that moment. And I've had it when I'm singing in the choir, where I've just become so overwhelmed with a knowingness that everything, we're connected, and that it is about love. And I know that sounds, it sounds a bit wishy-washy, but I can't tell you how those moments are. And that's where meditation leads you to.
Well, it's about the present, isn't it? Because that's what you're really doing. You're sort of forgetting about what's going on in the past. You're trying not to worry too much about what's coming up in your day or what's happening in the world or what's happening over the next few weeks. What you're really trying to do is just be in the moment. And that's when you're feeling like you're in a meditative state, is when you're in the moment. And that's what I'm saying. Like, most people have experienced that being in the moment, whether it's playing some music or whether it's dancing, being with your friends and dancing, or whether it's just sitting at the beach and watching the amazing view. When you get into the moment, that's what you're trying to recreate when you meditate, is being in the present. And that's why you experience those feelings.
And I think for what's going on at the moment, people don't generally have access to that, right? They may not be able to get to the place where, physically, where they may have had that sense of well-being. So then that's about really going within, and you can experience that in your own lounge room by yourself, having that feeling. And I think that came for me quite a few years after my first experience with meditation, being able to actually meditate anywhere and still get that sense, because I had to be in nature a lot of the time, or I had to be thinking about nature or visualizing it. But really.
I mean, for me, it was a critical factor in me improving my mental health. Absolutely. I think it was a vital factor. It's not the only one. There are other things that I did, including exercise and spending a lot of time outdoors and spending a lot of time with friends and family. But meditation has been a critical part of my life. It's a daily practice for me. I found that it dramatically helped with my thoughts of depression and anxiety. It definitely made me feel much more connected to the moment, much more connected to the people around me. It made me feel calmer. It just made me feel like it was easier to deal with challenges. Like that. Like, I don't know what's going on scientifically, but sometimes when I when I get into that meditative state, I find that it feels like something's on my head. Like, I feel like I'm wearing a hat or a cap or a helmet, or I've got sunglasses on my head, or I've got headphones on my head. And often I'll sort of reach up and there's nothing there. So there's definitely something going on in the brain. Yeah. It'd be great to find someone who can tell us more about the studies that have happened there. Yeah. But like, I've actually just got a study in front of me, Mel, and I'll read it out, because
the 12.
Yeah. So there's been quite a lot of research done now. So there's research done by Harvard and UCLA and quite a number of other universities. But this is found on healthline.com, and there's a couple of key findings that they've found. So the first one is that it reduces stress. The second one, it helps control anxiety. And for me, that's what I was talking about before. Rather than thinking about the past or thinking too much about what's coming up, it's helping me focus more on the present, which helps me with my anxiety. The third thing is it promotes emotional health. So I think there's a combination of those things. But even if you're not experiencing depression or anxiety, it's just something that's really calming for you. It's something that's it just helps you sort of focus on your own well-being. So I think that's really helpful for anyone. It enhances self-awareness, and that's something that I found as well, that it sort of helps you focus on what's the important things in life. It tries to sort of focus you on what you should be grateful for and have gratitude towards. The number 5 is that studies have shown that it can lengthen your attention span. So be interesting to sort of find out more information about that. Where we had number 6, reduces age-related memory loss. So, I mean, I haven't experienced that there. So there's some research there that regular people who practice meditation in older age have a much better brain function. So that's really interesting. Can generate kindness. And I think that goes to, so that's number 7, generates kindness. And I think that goes back to that being sort of mindful and being more present and being more, just sort of more in tune with what's going on.
Well, it makes you more
around.
aware of your emotions. And I think people can struggle with that. And then you do have more empathy, more compassion for people, because if you're feeling that.
Absolutely.
And you can put yourself in someone else's shoes. And yeah, I think we can see that that's not happening a lot at the moment. So that would be awesome for people to focus on that.
So number 8, it's research is showing that it may help people fight addictions. So research has shown that meditation help people to learn to redirect their attention, manage their emotions and impulses. So that's really interesting. Number 9, helps improve sleep. So I know a lot of people use meditation at nighttime to help sleep. For me, I meditate in the morning. I get up nice and early, so I've got the time to myself in the morning. That's my practice, but I know a lot of people have guided meditations to help them with sleep. Number 10, helps control pain. So there's a lot of research that's coming out now that people who use meditation can help control pain as well as using medications. That's really interesting. Number 11, the research has shown that it can help decrease blood pressure. And finally, number 12, the best thing about it is that it is accessible anywhere. And I think that's one of the best things about meditation, is that you don't need a gym membership. You don't need to be a member of a club. You don't need to conglomerate in a special building or special equipment. It really can be done anywhere. It can be done, in your office, in your house, on the beach, wherever's comfortable and suitable for you.
And it's even good to try it when you think it's really not a good place to meditate, like somewhere really noisy, somewhere you may even be in a room full of people and things are going on around you. You don't, like you can actually just quieten your mind even with people around you. I think a good one is power tools for me. Like the power tools drive me crazy. And so I do actually just focus on the power tool and just really bring my awareness in. It actually just makes me less, sensitive to it. So you can try it. Yeah, it's not where you don't need perfect conditions. I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
And I think that would encourage more people to meditate rather than the idea that you've got to sit somewhere on like a yogi and get into it. I think it is, yeah.
So Mel, you and I, we're not experts at meditation. We're just advocates of it. We both have our own practices, and we've both found it to be really beneficial. So to wrap up, what could you recommend people? How can they get involved? How could they start?
A really good app that I've tried with a few people, friends and family, is Headspace. Take 10, which is like a 10-minute guided meditation. I've actually found that for a few people I've recommended to, that was a really good gateway. It's quite a well-known all around the world. I think that has been the whole article was written about Headspace and the app he started, and that's how people have got into it. So I think, or Insight Timer, you can give those a go. I know that they're good gateways to just trying it.
Yeah, great. Well, I know there's Russell Brand, of all people, is a big believer in meditation. He's got some fantastic videos as well. If people want to sort of check his videos out on beginning meditation and some guided meditations, they're a great way to get started. My advice to people would be to get started how I got started. Find a really beautiful place and just try and sit down and calm your mind and focus on your breath and give that a try. But definitely I would recommend anyone to start bringing it into their daily health and wellness routine. I think it's been so beneficial for me, something that is vital to my everyday life now. It's just something that I take on every day.
And same for me, Sean, and resuming it this year has shown me how important the last 15 years has been.
I found this really great quote. It's an old, I think it's an old Hindu quote, and it says, You should find time in your busy day to meditate for 20 minutes. If you're very busy, you should find an hour to meditate.
Yes.
And that's how important I think it is as well.
Yeah.
So let's wrap things up, Melanie.
Yes,
it's been great
thanks,
to
Sean.
talk
That's
about
been awesome
meditation.
To talk about meditation.
I think this is a great episode just to get people thinking about it if they've never thought about it before. We'll put some links in our show notes on some of the apps or some of the YouTube videos that we've seen, and give it a go, people. Thanks for listening.
Great. Thanks, Sean. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.